Hi. So I'm here at the Toolbox, and I wanted to talk to you about the Santa Susana Field Laboratory and the recent meetings that happened regarding the NASA portion of the site. This is about supplemental EIS. What EIS stands for is an environmental impact statement. And the purpose of that is to weigh the consequences of the action, the current conditions, with the impacts of the cleanup action. And what I witnessed in the last two meetings that happened this last week, it wasn't as surprising as I would like it to have been, but sadly it is a real problem. I think, and especially because I've been watching impeachment hearings at the same time, it has allowed me to look at this in a different way. For those of you who don't know me, I've been involved in this process for about 20 years. There are some people that have been involved much longer than I have, for 30 and more years. And what I'm learning is that there are a variety of motivations for that. I live at the 2-mile mark in West Hills, at the drainage of Dayton Canyon, which is Roscoe and Valley Circle. And so when I first became aware, I was very concerned. I launched cleanuprocketdyne.org in 2001. That's when my son was just 5 years old. And now he's 22, and we're still waiting for the cleanup to start. Now, there's been a lot of things that have happened along the way. In 2007, we found a wall of contamination in the drainage that led to Brandeis Bardeen, which is now American Jewish University, to the north in Simi Valley. And that resulted in a cleanup that still continues to this day. In fact, tons and tons and tons of lead, like thousands of tons of lead over these decades, have been removed as a result. And parts of Sage Ranch continue to be closed because that continues to come off, because they used it as a shooting range. So it was sort of a problem compounded in that sense. So fast forward, there's a lot of things wrong with the site. So for basic education, Area 4 is on the westernmost side. That's the side that faces essentially Thousand Oaks. And that is where the nuclear work happened. In the middle, kind of the donut hole, is the NASA portion, and that's where they did rocket tests, like 30,000 rocket tests. And that's how we went to the moon. And then the eastern flank is the edge of Ventura County. It's actually that county line. And Area 1 was managed by Boeing. Prior to that, it was Rockwell Rocketdyne. Coincidentally, I'm in a place here called the Toolbox in Chatsworth, which is sort of a mini Rocketdyne in many ways. Another story. So I went to this meeting, and they're talking about the changes. And this is the sheet that was provided by NASA. And so alternative A, and so by the way, there was an article in the newspaper before the meetings happened about the protest that was going to happen, and that perhaps Kardashians might be there. I would argue that this is a distraction and not helpful and not the purpose of this part of the process. This is actually a part of the process that enables the surrounding communities to articulate what worries them. What are they concerned about when it comes to the cleanup? So they went through quite a bit of trouble explaining how to get involved, how to participate, how to be heard, how to have your voice be heard in that process, what decisions are being made. And instead, we got a media stunt that was not helpful. And they also put out a different handout. And in that handout, they used only options A and D, so the most protective and the least protective, as if there was nothing in between. So then we have to talk about what the AOC is. And I would like to say that in modern era, AOC stands for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, not Administrative Order on Consent. It's a generic term. It's an agreement that was signed in 2010, and it is an agreement to clean up the site to background. And with that agreement resulted in using the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act funding. Over $42 million was spent in order to fund a radiological survey and a determination of what is background, what is normal for this area, for this geological formation, everything. And so $42 million was spent to find out what is on the site and what is normal for surrounding the site. Because the previous background study that they did years before, I think it was in 2003, they used Bell Canyon, which is a neighboring community, to be background. And many would argue that Bell Canyon was likely impacted, so that wasn't the right way to determine what background is. The other important thing to understand is an AOC cleanup, which they are articulating as the only legal, safe way to do this, has never been done before, anywhere. Not at this scale, not at all. And if they had examples, they would be showing them to you, but they don't because there aren't any. So we have to ask ourselves, what are we trying to gain? So option A that they're talking about will take 25 years, and that's just for the donut hole, the NASA portion. 25 years from now, I will be 80, and you should ask yourselves how old your children will be, because there will be many fires that will happen during those 25 years. So I'm not saying don't do that, because I think we do need to clean it up, but I am in favor, personally, of alternative B. And what they did is they took the lookup table that took a lot of work to develop. And by the way, I would wonder, why are they not defending that lookup table if that's what they want? So what NASA did, if I'm to understand this correctly, is they took 6 analytes that were found everywhere. And instead of using the lookup table number, they used an EPA screening level. So a US EPA screening level, what is done around the rest of the United States, and use that number instead of the lookup table, which is supposed to depict what local background is. By doing that with these 6 analytes, you reduce the cleanup down to 12 years and more reasonable. And this also has to do with, we have to care about where these trucks go, as well as the communities that they're going to drive past. If you look at the organizations that are pushing for the most strenuous cleanup, they're also telling you to be afraid of trucks and suggesting that there's a conveyor belt solution that can be done that eliminates trucks. But if you look at a map and you look at reality of what is directly below the site, you would be putting a conveyor belt over a children's camp that has already had litigation, so they obviously cannot sue again, and I cannot imagine that they would want to expose themselves or those kids to any additional risk. So we shouldn't be talking pie in the sky things that can never happen, because I can tell you that a cleanup that never happens is not going to protect anyone either. So I am personally in favor of a modified version of alternative B. And that means taking, and by the way, of those 6 analytes that they chose, I would prefer that they not use dioxin. I think that that's one of the most toxic things around. It is created by forest fires, but there's also additional what are called congeners, like the TCDD volume, I guess you would say, is much more toxic and is from burning things that are much more toxic to begin with than just forest. So we need to think about that, but I think we can look at some of the details and make sure that we mitigate for those. So if we're going to leave anything behind, we need to look at what is the pathway. How might it reach wildlife, people, surrounding environment, water quality? Those are the things we need to be thinking about. And by the way, all of this, we need to be thinking about the groundwater below at that time. So when you look at the stunts, when you look at the media stuff that you're hearing about, I would ask that you try to participate. Talk about what worries you. File a comment. There's a deadline. There's a deadline of December, I can never find it, December 9th. So you have until December 9th to write comments. And it makes sense to really think about these options, the amount of time, and the fact that this is not going to be happening in isolation. This is going to be happening while they're trying to clean up Area 4, the nuclear side, as well as the rest of the site owned by Boeing. So that's 25 years plus another 25 years plus another 25 years? I hope not. So we need to be smarter than that. And we need to participate in a real way about the facts. Otherwise, what we say is just going to be discounted because it isn't true. So we want to make sure we stay factual. Thank you.